So, I like pie. Pie is delicious. I like different kinds of pie. I like apple pie and berry pie, as I said. I like, I found this really good vegan cheesecake, which I think is pie. It has a crust all around, That's basically pie. And I could go on and on about different. I even like pizza pie. Really like pizza. A lot. That was the main thing I fantasized about my first year in Japan. I'd be sitting there thinking about pizza for long periods. Pizza. There is no pizza here. There's absolutely no pizza. None. Oh, but that there were pizza. If I ran away today, I could have pizza within just a few hours. Maybe I should run away. So let's talk about pie, shall we? If you have a pie, in general, let's talk about, triple berry? Let's say you have a triple berry pie. You can cut the pie in slices, right? Couldn't you? You could cut a pie in slices. In fact, people usually do cut pies in slices, don't they? You have to admit it. So you cut a slice, and then you give someone a slice, and in the slice there's the crust, and then there's the center. That's what a slice of pie is like. Maybe you know. Did you know that? You know. Okay, very good. And then you get another slice and give that to someone else, right? Some people like to get 2 slices. They eat one and then they get another one. Sometimes if you have different kinds of pie, you take a small slice of 2 types at the same time, right? All of this is true. You can't deny it. But I have to say that I like sweets. Did you all know? Okay, sorry. So sometimes I buy myself a pie. I just eat it. Not all in one sitting, don't get me wrong. But I eat the pie, I'm saying. So I have a pie. And when I eat a pie, I do not cut it in slices. No. Why would you do that? It's just you. It's just you who's eating. I'm just eating. I live way out there in the tundra, far away from the rest of you without water. I have a hard life. I'm not going to cut the pie into... I just have a fork and a pie. Come on. And the exciting part of the pie to me, unlike many people, because I know that it's the hard part. I understand that it's the difficult part to make. It requires a lot of skill. But to me, the good part of the pie is not the crust. It's not. And so when I have the pie, I'm holding the pie, I just take a bite right out of the middle. That's what I do. Does that make sense? Again, you can't deny it. I mean, you haven't seen it, but you can't deny it. So you just have to take my word for it that I eat the pie like that. And then eventually you get to the crust, and you're like, I shouldn't throw this away. Even though the crust was the hard part to make well. Did you know that? Am I wrong? No. Yes, I'm right. So, does that clarify what I'm saying? No? No. This is an extremely skillful metaphor. Everything I said had precise meaning. I've been developing this metaphor for years. Who does anyone understand the metaphor? No one understands the metaphor. Even fewer people understand the metaphor than know about the Buddha's life. Well, that's fair. So, this is about fundamentalism and mysticism. Because I was asked, is it the case that different religions have different goals? To what extent is that true, and what should we do about it? Am I wrong? Yes, I was asked that question. So, I just answered it. But I'll explain the metaphor. So, everything about the metaphor was important, including the fact that I was eating it alone. Even that was important. So, if you take the world spiritual tradition, okay, you can take that as a whole thing, couldn't you? Like a pie, a whole pie. It's a whole pie of the world spiritual tradition, yes? You could do that, and if you took that pie of the world spiritual tradition, you could, if you wanted, cut it up, couldn't you? You could cut it up into different slices, couldn't you? You can't deny it. You could say there's Christianity over here, and there's Buddhism over here, and there's scientific materialism over here. Couldn't you? You could even throw Judaism in there somewhere. Right? Yes. So you have all these different slices of the pie. And each of those slices has the center part, the gooey part that I like, and the crust, which is hard to make well. Really hard to make well. Now it's all making sense, isn't it? So you could take a slice out of it and give it to someone, couldn't you? You could take a slice of it, another pie, and give that to someone also, couldn't you? And sometimes people want a big slice of the berry pie, and sometimes they want, another slice of some other kind of pie. Right? That's the more modern way. You take parts from different things, Decide which parts you already agree with, and then select that out. But you don't agree with the other parts, so meh. What do they know? Then you take the other part you agree with, right? So that you have a religion based on your preferences. Yes? I worship my preferences. So, that happens. And that's a valid way to cut up the pie. You can cut up the pie into slices like that. But for me, when I'm going to cut up the pie, personally, I don't cut up the pie that way. I don't find that to be preferable. I don't find that to be most effective. Instead of that, I like to just cut the pie into two parts. The outer part and the inner part. Yes? The hard part that is hard in both ways. It's hard, meaning crunchy, and it's also hard, meaning difficult to make. And then there's the center part, which is gooey and fantastic. So, in the same way, you can divide up the world spiritual tradition into just two parts. Fundamentalism and mysticism. Now, the outside part is filled up with all kinds of beliefs. And there are certain goals that you're supposed to have, certain explanations and descriptions. And these beliefs and perspectives and tachiba, standpoints, are different from each other. And in fact, they're not reconcilable. They're irreconcilable. You cannot make them fit together. When you hold this view, you cannot hold the other view. It's impossible. They disagree with each other. They're contradictory. They're opposites. Yes? You cannot do it. You can't bring them together. I want to be really clear on this point, because this actually really matters. Matters more than you might think. They are irreconcilable. The views of one tradition and the views of another tradition cannot be brought together. They disagree, and they cannot agree. This is extremely important. And it results in people fighting for days while others wish that they would just stop and get on with business. Right? Daniel and I fought for days over this point. Remember? Well, what views we would hold on to as what was the word we used? Non-negotiable. So there are certain views, and if you disagree with those views, you can't be a part of this. You have to agree with these views. That's it. I would like to be clear That's a part of the pie. If you make a pie, that has to be part of it. Even a pizza has a crust. It must be in the pie. It is required. Huh? But there's a central part too, held by the crust. And that central part is mysticism. That central part is in agreement, is agreed upon by all of these traditions. There's a contemplative core to these various traditions, even scientific materialism. There's a contemplative core there. There are mystics involved. You can't get rid of them. Yes? They're going to be flies in the ointment of fundamentalism. Does that make sense? There's going to be this central part that continually turns out, how do I say? You know when you're cutting up a pie, there's a portion right in the center, you know? Who knows which slice that's going to be in? I mean, who knows? Can you imagine that? Right in the center. And then you try to cut the pie somehow. And it's going to end up in some slice. You don't know which one. Because it's not, who knows? It's in that one, not the other one. Yes? There's this point right in the center that isn't really in any of the slices. But it's in all of the slices. But it's not in any of the slices, it's just in all of them. It's like that. It has this mystical quality, you'd say. So if we divide the pie up that way, then we see that there are just two kinds of pie, which actually makes much more sense, because the pie is inherently like that. There's an outer part and an inner part. In the same way, there's fundamentalism and there's mysticism. The question for us, though, remains, how do we encourage mysticism so that it is both realized and empowered? How do we make it so that people actually put their own experience at the center rather than beliefs? How do we make it so that people consider taking off revelation to be important rather than putting on and believing? How do we do that? The crust matters for that. The crust has to be set up in order to make this gooey center work. There are ways of setting up these views, these perspectives, these stated goals, these ways of looking at things, these aspirations. There are ways of setting that up such that it is less likely that mysticism, contemplative exploration, revelation will happen, and there are ways of setting those things up so that it's more likely that mysticism, contemplative methods, revelation will happen. They impact each other. If that's realized, that can re-inform how exactly the crust, the fundamentalist views, are structured in order to make them more beneficial for the world, because the people who've actually realized that are free of the world and don't have, as I say, a horse in the race. The only reason they're involved is compassion, because the world offers them nothing. If you move through this first jhana, the world offers you nothing anymore. You can have more than the world can offer you just by going into a cabin in the woods. The only reason to continue on with all this is because of your concern for others. If it's really like that. Of course, this is a conditioned state, and it will fall away, and so it doesn't actually work that way until you've actually had true insight. But this is you could say, a taste of it. Okay? First jhana is more like smelling the pie from outside the bakery. Yeah. Sort of like that. You haven't actually tasted it. But still, you have a sense. Maybe there's some pie. So So, to the extent that you're moving into the center, the various traditions agree. To the extent that you're moving out to the crust, the various traditions disagree. One of the things that's hardest of all is to understand which of these fundamentalist views is the best one. This is a very hard question to answer because you cannot skillfully answer it from within the tradition. Is that totally clear to you? You cannot skillfully answer whether a tradition is helpful from within the tradition. Gödel already proved this. I'm not going to get into it. I went over it at the last retreat. Okay? You need to be free of the tradition. And so the question that we have is, which traditions actively free you from themselves? A tradition that's structured well will free you from all of the other ones, and then finally, whether you like it or not, free you from itself. And one of the biggest issues that people have when dealing with religions is that they get mad at the inconsistencies and the inadequacies, they get mad at the contradictions and the holes in the tradition. Without understanding that while it's true that sometimes there are contradictions and holes because the teachers, the people who made the tradition, aren't skillful, but if you're talking about the most skillful teacher, they will intentionally put contradictions and holes in their own teaching so that you won't become trapped in it. There will be a contradiction. Now, it's possible that this is unskillful, but it's also possible that it's skillful. And you'll stop and say, wait, that doesn't make any sense. And then they're asking you at that time to look, to not just believe this. And then there are holes in it. You say, but you didn't explain this very important thing. Say, right, you can't find it in the tradition. You have to escape into your own direct experience that's beyond conceptualization, beyond understanding, in order to directly encounter this. Yes? So you have a map. The map has limitations of all kinds. Yes? That's not bad. Not inherently, because you can get so wrapped up in the map that you stop seeing the world. And you can get mad that there's a hole in the map. Because you say, well, the map doesn't show this part of town. But then the teacher will say, well, yeah, so what do you see when you look there? You see the real world. You see through the tradition to the thing that it is indicating. But you directly do it. The structuring of the outside so that it seamlessly moves into the center, and the realization of the center so that it seamlessly informs the outside through a selfless compassion for the benefit of the world. This is the skill of producing a spiritual tradition. And it's extremely difficult. But it's the most important thing human beings do. So far, anyway. Because when it's done well, it saves the world. When it's done poorly, it destroys the world. And you can accurately measure whether a tradition is doing a good job by whether it's destroying the world. So, for example, is it killing living beings? Yes? But then right away you have this problem, don't you? Well, who cares? Is it bad to kill living beings? Some traditions say yes, some traditions say no. Right? Some traditions say it's good to kill living beings. Right? It's good to kill mice. That's a good thing. It's good to destroy all of its habitat because then we get something out of it, some resource. Right? Like my friend, if you call him that, whose job is to cut down the rainforest to extract fossil fuels by destroying native tribes. Yes? He feels like he's doing the right thing. He really believes that. Sincerely, I've talked to him about it. He has lots of reasons that he's making the world. These people are backward. That's not a way of life. They're stuck on it, though. I'm helping them to escape from their sad lives. Yes? And global warming isn't real, and people need energy. I'm serving the world and getting rich. Win-win. Yes? Traditions say all kinds of things, and so we have to ask, well, is it true? This really matters. Is it true that you shouldn't kill things? Is that true? In an appropriate tradition, we are given the ability to go back down through all of these layers of human interpretation to return to that which is less and less made up, less and less fabricated. And a tradition ought to teach at least some people how to do that, so that those people can be the true authorities. Having seen beyond all of our interpretations, there is still, you could say, something to see. Having seen beyond all meanings, there is still, you could say, meaning. It's extremely mysterious. I teach the way I teach because, as we discussed in these meetings, as far as I can tell, the tradition that has been most successful at causing people to be successful mystics, meaning causing people to get to the point when they themselves are able to say if the Buddha was right. That a person has the authority to say, oh, yes, he was right, or no, that's not right. The tradition that has been most successful at giving people that capacity and then giving exactly those people power over the fundamentalist aspects of the tradition. Because there are some traditions that just kill those people, right? There's a whole variety. Others give those very people power. The tradition that has been most successful at that in world history is Buddhism. And let's be clear, the way I defined spirituality, I'm including a lot of other things here. Humanism, science as we know it nowadays, and other things that people wouldn't usually call a religion, but everyone is following a religion, at least one, and some of us take slices from different ones. But we are following a religion, period. You can't avoid it, unless you're alone in a cave. But if you're in this society, you're following a religion in a way that's much more profound and significant than most people understand. We delude ourselves quite a bit about whether we're just being brainwashed. And a lot of the time the traditions themselves can tell us how to brainwash ourselves about that. Yes? So science, for example, claims that it actually describes the way things are. It's an incredible claim. And we just buy it. We just believe it, even though its claims are not supported by evidence. And it also claims that its claims are supported by evidence, and yet we just buy in. So, because certain traditions, such as Buddhism, are successful at this, we use them to become more capable of putting ourselves, our own experience, at the core of this spiritual exploration. That is not done by adding all of this stuff on. It's done by discovering how this points towards taking this and everything else off. That taking off of things is what gives us authority.